because Mark went home. He got fussy, and he had a division with one of his co-workers, Barnabas, I think it was. They split, and when Paul could, he could lose his temper, and Paul, he didn't ever claim to be holy. He said, I count my righteousness as nothing. He said, I want to get in on the righteousness of Jesus Christ. So, on the one hand, he says, I'm confident about where I'm going, and we should all be confident too. And I, frankly, honestly think we're no good to anybody else till we get that part of it settled. We're no good as an influence. I think about the impression that we make sometimes as Christians, not we personally, but I mean in general. If you're a Christian who's doubtful about their status and doubtful about their situation, it tends to make you a little bit insecure for one thing, and also a little bit sour and dour. When I was growing up, my idea of Christians was these very sour, dour people wearing black all the time, kind of like the Pilgrims, very sour, dour. Why don't you be a Christian? Be like me. Well, no thanks. No thanks. That's not much of an influence, is what I'm saying. Why don't you be a Christian, be like me, and have fears and doubts and anxiety your whole life? Hope I'm good enough. Well, I've already got those things. Come to church. You think you got troubles now? What do you come to church for? Just add to them. No, it's not. It's a release. Jesus said, if you come to me, I'll give you rest. That's what he says. So we've got to get that part of it settled. If we depart, we go to be with Christ. And we are secure in his love. And I don't mind saying that word. I know that really rubs some people the wrong way to say that we're secure. I don't mind telling you, we are secure in his grace. I love what the Message translation says. There's some things that when I found them, they were great relief to me. Because, listen, I didn't necessarily have anybody, when I first started off as a Christian, I didn't have anybody around telling me the things that I'm telling you now. I had to find them out the hard way. I was very insecure. I felt like it was all about me, like I was walking on a tightrope. I heard one preacher say, I felt like I was on a tightrope walking over the fires of hell with gasoline underwear. Well, that's kind of an insecure situation to be in, and I know what that feels like, because I thought, from all the preaching I heard, most of it, I thought it was all about me, and if my holiness had to be impeccable, and I knew enough about me to know my holiness wasn't impeccable, and my righteousness wasn't perfect. But the thing that I didn't see, I thought everybody else has got it figured out and is all clean, pure, and perfect, and it's just me who had problems. It took me a long time to find out that it's not about me. If I'd read Ephesians 2:8, I would have read that not of yourselves. It's the gift of God. But I remember reading in John's Gospel, and I'll just share this with you just in passing before we go on. John's Gospel, chapter 6, this was a big blessing to me. I've read this before, verse 37. First time I read this, I thought this is great. John's Gospel, chapter 6, verse 37, Jesus said, all that the Father giveth me shall come to me. That's good. And I could understand that as a Christian, that I'm in that category, because I've come to him. So evidently he's talking about me now. He says, all, and you too, all that the Father giveth me shall come to me. And then this next part is what's really good. And him that cometh to me, I will in no wise cast out. Now, I kind of had the impression that if you weren't good enough, that he might cast you out. He's liable to throw you out if you weren't quite good enough. I don't know if you've ever been in that kind of church environment where you feel like, you might go too far, you might do something wrong. He might be liable to throw you out, if you were not good enough, not clean enough, not right enough. But he says, him that cometh to me, I will in no wise. Now again, that's King James language. I don't go around saying in no wise. You kids take the trash out, or I will in no wise give you your allowance. Now that's just an imaginary example, because I take the trash out myself, and they don't get an allowance. So that was just all made up. But believe me, they're taken care of. They can get money. They have other ways of getting money. But why are we saying? Oh yeah, I don't ever say I will in no wise. I don't say that. But what it means, what does it mean? It means ain't no way. There is no way, under no circumstance. Now that's pretty good. That's a good thought. But I like what the Message says. This is great. Here, listen to this now. The Message translation says, every person the Father gives me eventually comes running to me. That's a good thought, isn't it? Sometimes people wait till the last minute. As we were talking about. But that's okay. Listen, talking about heaven, when we're all on the other side, all those differences won't make any difference at all. All those distinctions, well, did you get saved in your last 6 months? None of that will matter. It won't make any difference at all. All distinctions and differences are erased. Doesn't make any difference, but he says, all that the Father gives me will eventually come running to me. Listen to this now. And once that person is with me, I hold on and I don't let go. How about that? Now we think of it from our perspective, that we're holding on to him. And it was a surprise to me to read this and consider from his perspective. You see, it's a joint thing. It's not just that we receive Jesus, he receives us. You ever think about that? You know, the Pharisees, they got mad at Jesus. And here's what they said. This man receives sinners and eats with them. And that's right. He receives sinners. And when we come to Jesus as a sinner, he receives us. We receive him, he receives us. Now, from our perspective, from our point of view, we're not always perfect in our half of the relationship. But he is, you see. If you think of it like a marriage, we're not always perfect, but he is. He never forsakes us. He never leaves us. He holds on and he doesn't let go. And whereas we're not perfect, he is, you see. I saw a sign on a church one time. It was in Woodward, by the way, in case you're wondering. So don't think about our local church. But, you know, churches have these signs out front, put little, sometimes witty sayings, sometimes funny sayings, most of the time just threatening things. But this church said, God is faithful, are you? And I stopped, and as I passed by and read that. It sounds kind of hostile almost, you know. It kind of has a threatening ring to it. God is faithful, are you? And I thought to myself, well, you know, chances are from time to time, maybe no. Maybe I might fail, you know. But here's the thought. I might fail, but he never fails. My grip's not perfect, but his grip is secure. So here's where we're secure. Not secure if our salvation is based on our own performance, then no, you'll never be secure. You'll never be safe. Because your performance, you might have a good record for years and years and years and then make a mistake down the line. Now, most of us are honest to know we have a spotty record of mistakes, lots of mistakes. But it's not based on our perfection or on perfect performance. Aren't you glad about that? It's based on his grace. And he takes hold of us when we take hold of him. And he says, oh, it went away. What did it say again? Whoever comes to me... oh yeah, I forgot how to say. Once that person is with me, I hold on, he says. I hold on and I don't let go. Now the reason some people, I'll just be honest with you, the reason some people are alarmed and unhappy with a thought like that and are afraid to say we're secure in our salvation. Now, before I tell you this, I'm going to say I think it's important that we know that we are. I think it's important that we preach this. I think it's important that we know, because in my opinion, you're not any good to anybody else unless you know you yourself are secure. You've got to know that before you can be the right kind of influence. But I think the reason in the past, and some church people shy away from that, is they think that if people understand that they're secure, that it some way promotes sin or licenses people to sin. So, and I understand what Janet was saying earlier about people think, well, I can just do anything I want to do. Well, that's true. We do make our own choices, make our own decisions, but there's always consequences to the decisions we make. But here's a thought that's a good balance to that. And I want to read this to you. And you know the story. I could just tell you the story, but I'd like to read it. Look in Luke's Gospel in chapter 15. And this is an important thing to consider. And just think about this for a moment. A certain man had two sons. Verse 11. Chapter 15, verse 11. Luke 15, 11. A certain man had two sons. The younger of them said to his father, Father, give me the portion of goods that falleth to me. And he divided unto him his living. Not many days after, the younger son gathered all together, and he took his journey to a far country, and there wasted his substance with riotous living. Now this is a little bit like what people do sometimes. This sums it up pretty well. He got what the father gave him, and he went and wasted it. He squandered it. That's the way of saying it. And when we call this person the prodigal son, sometimes we misunderstand what the word prodigal means. The word prodigal doesn't mean somebody who went away. The word prodigal means someone who's wasteful in their spending. That's what it means. He wasted what he had. That's why he's called the prodigal son. That means wasteful spending. It said he wasted his substance with riotous living. Now there's a good polite King James word for you, riotous living. You know what that means? Riotous living. We don't say that. That means partying is what that means. Wild partying. It calls it here riotous living. Now, Most people don't understand that's the word for what it is that they're doing. That goes on a lot. But look at what happened here. He took what he had and he wasted it with riotous living.